yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to come into this forum and just talk about the business process automation. In simple words, like robotic process automation as well. You might hear a different word which is now being in the market, or you hear the buzz around like the intelligent process automation. It's pretty much like all the same things, because in the today's fast-paced and challenging, I would say, the work environment, having a deep understanding of the process automation is really crucial for I would say fostering a harmonious and productive workplaces. So in this session, what we are going to do is we're going to go through the fundamental concepts, I would say the baseline of the process automation, from the robotics to intelligent and artificial intelligence. What I'll be doing is that I'll be, flicking between different slides, and we'll be talking about the details. So, but as a high level, in today's session, you will explore the intricacies of process and intelligent automation, the role of automation in enhancing the business processes and the efficiency. The way I have designed it, it is basically for anyone who is interested into understanding how the process automation will work, that eventually leads to your automation center of excellence. So that covers the end-to-end starting point to the delivery and to working of these robots. There's a very, very different concept behind these robots that I will discuss with you guys later on that one. But I think from the learning outcomes of this session, I would like to say that, it will at least give you the basic and essential skills to um, understand the process of automation. Um, I think that by the end, you will be able to comprehend the concepts and be able to at least kick off the automation center of excellence basics, which are, will be able to make your organization understand that what it is and how you can, benefit the get the benefit out of it. One of the very quickest things that we'll be focusing on today again is um, the ROIs, the return on investments. So if anybody who is willing to start up a business, like we were just talking to Ehsan, or somebody's already into that space, you can definitely look into that one, that side of it, that how the robotics process automation, the software world of the automation can help you to explore the ROIs. And it's really very quick wins. We will go through some case studies as well, very short ones, that I have worked with a product called UiPath in the past. So with their consent, obviously, I have taken some of their videos, which I will be sharing with you guys, and you can understand the use cases that we go through. So let me jump into it. All right. The very first question, the very basic question that comes into our heads is like, what is RPA? When I say RPA, the most common word that is being used in the market is the RPA. So it is basically robotic process automation. But in a nutshell, if I have to explain it in a very simple word, it's mimicking the human action at the user interface level. In RPA world, basically, what we're talking about, we are mimicking the human actions at the user interface level. So when I say the user interface level, so anything that you do or interact with your computer system at a particular process that you do, right, from start to end. You can actually, the keyboard keystrokes that you do on the keyboard, the mouse clicks that you do on the systems, you go and drag and drop few things. You basically configure a computer system and software to do anything that you do. For example, logging into a particular email and then clicking on an email, opening it up, downloading a PDF, and reading some information, and then entering that information into a particular system. That's like a very high level process, right? You can automate that whole process. So whatever you are doing, the shortcut keys, from shortcut keys all the way to completing and saving a file into a particular folder, you can easily automate that particular process. That depends on how you need to automate it. That's obviously, it's a different thing. We will obviously discuss that a bit later. But what we do is, in the robotics world, is that we create the robots being Australian. we have this habit of shortening everything, so we like to call them bots. The very interesting factor around the bots world, whenever you speak to anyone, you will hear different names. So you might hear a name called as Marvin or Ginger, really funny names sometimes, like Optimus Prime for that example, right? So these are those bots that we call them. We make them, we humanize them, and they basically help you to complete all the repetitive, manual, and tedious tasks that you're doing on your daily basis. What it gives a benefit, the biggest of all, is that it allows a human being, like a person like me who is doing a lot of manual work, to make some really fast-paced working environment. But at the end of the day, they're the software system, so the judgmental call that has to be made will be made by the humans. The exceptions that will be done there, the exceptions will basically come into by the robots, by the humans as well. So these are like a very high level information or benefits that you can get out of it from the computer's robotic system. But in reality, if we have to look at that, what are the business benefits as an organization? If you have to go back to your organizations, or if you're running your own business, you will go back and ask them that what are the benefits that I am looking at. So just thinking that you are working in an accounts payable department, and you have thousands of invoices coming into your system that you have to process, and it takes them for you to make to process them in ages. So you basically end up automating that whole process, and those workarounds that you have created using the automation basically is so fast that in less than few hours, that work that you're doing in few days is being done, right? So it helps the organization to accelerate their digital transformation. As a normal human being, it improves the user experience. We have seen with my experience working with different organizations that it gives you better accuracy, very fast paced. A lot of times, a lot of issues that you cannot find being a normal human, the robots basically identify those issues within the software system that are being used, right? The biggest of all that I like to say is that you have a happy employee and a happy customer at the end of the day. When you are making a robot to work on a certain pattern, you basically reduce the compliance cost and risk. That again, fast-paced environment. Your process has to be standardized. It has to be re-engineered to in a way that the robots can actually work all these processing without any issues. So this is the high-level benefits that you see, that you improve the compliance, you improve the delivery of the system, then you have your return on investment is very high. If I tell you that we have achieved over 8 to 10 million Australian dollars in less than 2 years by automating a lot of processes, these are those intangible benefits that we have achieved, and these are the accurate numbers that I'm explaining to you. So these are those numbers which we have achieved over past few years with one organization. There was another one where we ended up automating 7 to 10 processes that ended up giving us over 1.5 to 2 million Australian dollars ROI in less than 2 years, less than 1 year time period again. So you have your cost reduction, you have your process improvement, process alignment. It eliminates the waste, it eliminates the repetitiveness. You have happy and satisfied employees, and most importantly, you have happy and satisfied customers. So before jumping on, like most of us have gone through the or loan taken process or the mortgage process for their homes in our countries, right? So if I ask anyone that when you applied for mortgage or when you applied for a loan in your when you were buying a home, as an example, how long it took for that whole process to get back, the bank to get back to you and tell you that your documents have been verified. Now we are happy to move to the next step. Does anyone remember that?
It's a long time ago, but perhaps 4 days.
Yeah, correct. So on average, it still take around 4 to 7 days minimum for the banks to basically come back and validate all the work that you have with all your documents. There are a couple of banks, of course I can't name them. I worked with them and as a consultant at the back end. Um, you're on call with them with your documents. You submit the documents, and within that call of less than 10 minutes, your initial verification gets completed. So as soon as you submit any specific document, the robots running in the background basically they do a quick check, a quick health check. There's a set pattern of information they need to find, regardless on what type of document that it is, regardless of what page that information is. They will traverse through multiple pages and all those things, and they will straight away come up and say that this person is good to go or not. So they will check their background credit history at the back end as well, and they will get information. So you're on call with someone in the bank, you're talking to them, and in less than 10 to 15 minutes, your initial application, your provisional approval comes through straight away. So that's a huge achievement itself. Just thinking, like Todd mentioned, that you have 4 days that when he applied for it, right? So when he goes for a new loan, it's going to get cleared in less than 10 minutes, right? So that kind of customer experience, if you're getting, it's all because of the automation and standardization and the compliance that is running in behind of it. So these are the benefits that you normally get out of it. But at the same time, when we talk about all these things, and I'm giving this example and all that, a lot of things come into mind that what it can do for you, right? Like I mentioned previously, that it enables you to execute the manual and repetitive task, the complex system, the complex processes that you're working through, right? So if you have all these processes being done automatically through automation, you will have a very improved customer experience and employee happiness and reduce compliance and all that thing. So next question that normally comes into your mind is that how this automation works, right? What are the brains behind it? What's the process that somebody has to follow? What are exactly the criteria that somebody has to, look into it? So, like I mentioned, that it mimics the human action, right? You might be thinking that, okay, there are applications which do not have the, background information, which do not have the background APIs, then how we can get that information? But any type of application that you have, the robots basically are developed just like any other software system to basically operate on these applications. It reads and actions the data in a very structured format. It has to be like that. So that's why if you remember when we in the previous slide when we mentioned that it has to be a standardized process. This means the process has to be standardized. It has to be re-engineered to be a seamless process so that the robots can go and work on them without any issues. So anything that you do, like opening an email attachment, copy pasting, filling in the forms, scraping the data from web, connecting to the systems, making calculations, follow the if and else statements, moving the different folders, like logging into the web, the weekly, monthly, quarterly reports that you create, right? So all these things, basically, this is how the robotics work. There's a set pattern, there's a set pathway of that, how this robotics works. We will discuss that in our later slides, but in general, this is pretty much like how the robotics work, that whatever you can think of, the robot can do it. And for the same reason, we call them that the robotics or RPA is transformative, right? But any idea why it is transformative? Any suggestions, anything that comes into your mind? Because see, it's a technology at the end of the day, right? And it is changing that how the world is getting all the work done. So just to understand a little bit more of it, right? I'm going to share a quick story of work so that you can actually hear what is a story of work, and that will allow you to understand at the same time as well that why RPA is transformative. So bear with me for a second.
This is the story of work. It started a long time ago, on a Monday, which was handy. For as long as history itself, the humans needed to work. They wanted to work. to grow things and create things and build things, to see what they were capable of, to stand at day's end and say, "I did that," which felt pretty good. So they worked more, built more, and created more, and travelled to far-off places. And then someone suggested submitting expense reports for those far-off places. His name was Glenn, and he was well, you know. Anyway, the people kept getting better at work. They built better tools to work more efficiently. They built amazing machines to work faster. They built computers to work smarter. But still, they couldn't do enough work. Because during all that work to do more work, they had created work, and not the good kind. Not the let's sit around and come up with ideas kind. Not the I can't wait to get to work so I can jump into a new project kind. The unpleasant kind. The drudge and data and admin and the doggone expense reports. So the humans had to work more at work they didn't like. That made them robotic. That didn't inspire. They had to postpone vacations. They had to miss family dinners. They were miffed. And then something happened. Someone had a really amazing idea. They came into work and said, "Stop working and start working." The humans thought she might have had wine at lunch, so she showed them a way to put the fun back into work, to waste less time doing the things they hated, to make more efficient the big tasks, to stop making the humans act like robots, and start teaching the robots to learn the humans. Not to replace people, but to free them. Even Glenn. Robots that learn you. Imagine the potential, like starting over, to help us remember again that work only really works when we're happy at it.
This is how the robotics work. Like we have gone into a phase that we are basically going through all these changes and creating work and more work, and we end up basically working like robots as well, but we do not improvise and we do not call those things. So um, this is how basically what the concept of robotics behind it is. One of the biggest dilemmas that we face when we automate anything is that when people talk about it, that what we are going to be doing and what are going to be areas that we're working on, um, what features and capabilities are more important in the RP technology. Before that one, they basically come and ask us that, are we going to lose our job? And if you remember that in that video, they spoke about that part as well. No, it's not going to replace the humans. It's going to basically work with the humans to make them more productive into the areas which they have not been able to because of this manual and tedious and repetitive work that they have been doing for ages. So just to avoid that one, right? You want to be more productive. You want to progress in your professional careers, be it you're the business owners, excuse me, or you are an employee, a manager, a team lead, a workforce, whatever you are. So you need to basically work with these technologies to make sure that you're being able to be more productive into all these areas. So how does this technology, how this whole process works? In a very simple world, right? In a very simple world, that whenever you go and start to assess anything, you need to prioritize your RPA use cases or use case or whatever that is, right? Then during that assessment, you need to determine that what is the net ROI that you're going to get out of it. How? There are particular steps to it. There's a particular process to it, which I will give you a very quick flavor of that at the end of our session today. But if your overall process is more expensive than the automation, then it makes sense. But if your automation turns out to be more expensive because you have your licenses cost and you have your development cost, your infrastructure cost, and all the other different things, then obviously there is no point of doing this whole automation. So you really need to be smart to understand that yes, we can actually automate this particular process or not. You need to pick up the right tools and technologies. Like I mentioned, that I work closely with UiPath and Automation Anywhere. These are the two biggest tools at the moment in the market, which are working in the RPA side of the world. And Blue Prism is also another example. So these are the three major tools that we are, which are in the market for that one. But at the same time, one of the biggest advantage that I have seen, and if you end up working in RP domain as well, you will also see is that it basically bridges the gap between your business and your IT teams. There's most of the time there's a bit of gap. There's a bit of tension between these two teams and all the time. So that this particular domain is one of those which really helps to build the bridges because it is being run and managed by IT for the business directly because you are helping them to automate their processes. So that's how your automated enterprise basically looks like. And when we talk about these things, like the tools and technologies that I've just mentioned, that another question that comes into your mind is that, why is the RPA the fastest growing enterprise software in the world at the moment? In a nutshell, if I have to explain it in 3 or 4 lines, I'll just say that it's rapid. It gives you really, really, really very fast return on your investments. There is a very minimal upfront investment in establishing or in developing the whole infrastructure of these tools as well. There's no disruption to the underlying systems because if you're working on the old legacy applications or the highly sophisticated applications, it still doesn't matter. You do not need to be a very qualified software developer to basically do the low code development. Instead, you can easily do it because it just works through the workflows and all those things. And it is very much scalable and enterprise ready, right? So what we are going to do right now is that, keeping that in mind, I'm going to go back. I'll come back to this slide and I'm going to, again, share my screen and we're going to give a quick overview before we jump into the RPA versus the artificial intelligence world, that how exactly these technologies work. So give me a second.
Automation has been embraced by people far and wide. Robots have helped people, unburdening them from dull, repetitive work so they can do the work that's worth doing. This has made people love the robots. And this love of robots has made RPA the fastest growing enterprise technology on Earth. It's also made the people want more robots. But not just any robots. They want smart robots. Robots that can do things like looking through invoices, making sense of sales notes, or reading endless contracts. So they want robots to have smart skills, like reading, listening, and even holding a conversation. And they want collaborative robots that can pass tasks back and forth smoothly. So the robots do the routine and the people can handle the exceptions. Robots with a sense of rhythm. They want robots to automate any process possible. But the people need help to figure out which processes to automate and how to do that. So it's AI to the rescue with task mining. And more kinds of people want robots. Non-developer, business-type people want robots. They want robots that are easy peasy to use. Some of them might even make their own. That has to be easy peasy too. And to take advantage of all the good automation ideas of others. The people want a place to post and share their robots. Finally, the people want to be able to prove to Glenn in finance that the robot investment is paying off. So they want to measure the robot's work and provide performance insights, and then generate reports to explain how much money RPA has saved their organization. Glenn is always happy to see a good return on robots investment.
The UiPath platform for the fully automated enterprise. It's the world's only comprehensive automation platform that gives the people what they want, from discovery to insights and all the wonderful robots in between.
One of the points, one of the ideas that you might have heard in this whole slide was the artificial intelligence, right? So when we talk about artificial intelligence, what is the very first thing that comes to your mind these days? Anyone?
ChatGPT.
Spot on. Exactly. So we were just at the start of our session, we were just talking about Google putting in those informations and all those things. So how does this artificial intelligence basically interact with this process automation? 99% of us have banking applications. We go to different sites and you see that there's a small icon, message us or chat with us. And when you open that window, you end up talking to an automated system, which basically picks up and the information, whatever question you ask, it will basically solve and answer those questions for you, right? But at the same time, what's the difference between a normal chatbot or RPA versus the artificial intelligence? Because in a simple world, if I explain it in a way that RPA is not AI, rather it is a combination of both. Basically, it helps you to establish that API. So whatever information I have written on this slide is basically, if I summarize it in a very simple or an easy way, is that when you look into the chat GPT, or let's go not go to chat GPT, let's go to chatbots, that you go to a particular website, a banking site, and you end up talking to an automated system. What it does is it basically being pre-fed about a particular question that the user are going to ask in a different ways. So it will pick up the information and then give you the answers based on that one, right? Because George might be asking a question in a different way versus to Jeff versus to Charlene versus to Naveed to somebody else. So it will pick up those common words, common phrases, and respond back to you in a way. Anything that is not being fed to that particular chatbot, it will not give you the answer for that one. That is where the AI part comes into it. That is how the chat GPT is basically built on those algorithms and formulas as well, that it learns on the go, right? It's the cognitive AI, it's the cognitive algorithms, the responsiveness of those systems that basically picks it up and it learns on the go, and it will, whatever you ask them, it will basically runs through its own algorithms and pick up that information and then take you to the right people or take you to that particular information, which will at least surface more than 60 to 70% of what you're looking for. So the RPA basically is working in parallel to AI, or AI is basically part of that process automation, streamlining, optimization of the process, re-engineering it, making sure that these robots are getting these skills to make sure that they understand their own language. You might have heard the terminologies machine ML, the machine languages. This is the natural languages for the processing of these robots. So another example to that one is that you have different PDFs, different documents that you need to go through. You need to understand those through. So what do you need to do about it? Not everybody is going to send you the same document. There's a specific pattern about different documents that the companies follow. So if you're working in a large enterprise, you might be getting invoices or different PDFs from 20,000 different clients or customers at one time. So you basically train your robots with the artificial intelligence capability so that it picks up that information and reads all the documents the way it is supposed to be. So if your shipping address is being mentioned on the very first page of a particular PDF, but on another type of PDF, it is being mentioned on the 73rd page, right? The robot will basically artificially intelligent to traverse through all that particular information and picks up the information and then put that information into a particular system where it is needed to. So keeping these few things that we have just discussed, there are a few use cases that we're going to go through to give you a bit of more understanding on how these RPA systems work. There are associated videos to all these use cases that how the robotics is basically working through it. I'm not keeping in mind the time. I'm not going to go through all the videos because the pack will be shared with you guys, so you guys can go through and have a very quick look of these between 2 to 5 minute videos of each use case that I have created with the help of my UFR team members to make sure that you understand that how these robotics are working. But at a very high level, these are the examples that we normally see, right? As an example, the legal department needed to automate this process because it involves significant manual processing of what? Of the errors and the high cost of operation due to the resources. The specific challenge was basically to update the database for checking the sanctioned parties. The process required heavy investigation against multiple sources and coordination with multiple units over the email. So you're getting the information, the source of data, source of information from, let's say, 15 to 20 different sources. And that's how the legal departments normally work, right? So they basically go through the whole process, and there's a compliance factor that you need to look into it. There has to be, if there's a legal document, you need to check somebody's ABN or PAYG or any other details. So what we do basically to start with, we first assess the process that how many transactions are involved in a particular day, in a week, in a fortnight, in a month. That gives us the volume of the data and the volume of information that is basically coming into it. This is the concept of task mining that we do, the process mining that we break into these things into, right? Then you look at the average handling time of that particular process, at how much time it takes. So in this particular case, you're looking at around around 120 minutes, 2 hours to 3 hours. So and you have a lot of compliance and checks and balances that you are going to multiple sources to fetch the information, download the Word documents, Excels, PDFs, and the emails and the information that are coming through. So the different sources that information is coming through, and just put yourself into that person's shoes who is basically as a paralegal collecting all that information from all different sources and putting them into a particular place and then generating the report out of it. All that information was assessed, and when the automation was in place, the robot basically picks up the process from a particular starting point. That is the starting point of that one. It goes from end-to-end calculations of the whole export control process, generate the reports, generate the results, send it to the relevant people, put the information of all the files, all the information it has picked from a particular in a particular location, dumps the information, and this whole process is taking less than 5 minutes. A human being was doing that process in 2 hours. That is now being done in less than 5 minutes. So how much benefits, how much hours per year saving? Approximately 2,100 hours per year, right? So now start calculating the cost of that whole thing, that how much ROI that you're going to get out of that particular process. Similarly, like I said, I'm not going to go into the videos of these particular process, but when you get a chance and get this slide pack, you will see that these videos are basically going to help you to see that how this whole particular process is going to that one. Similarly, you have I have put in the other examples of privacy and security compliance for the GDPR compliance process. It was like 100% process accuracy. There were 0 errors. The benefit that the business got out of it was the improved quality and speed of the processing. And eventually we came to a point where there was 0 human input required for the extracting that whole information and data. You know, what's one of the best things with these robots and these processes that we are going through? You do not need the performance management. They're not going to ask you for leaves. They're not going to ask you for pay raise. They're not going to ask you that I cannot work at 11:30 midnight or 2 a.m. or at 5 a.m. in the morning. You just need to schedule these robots. They will, the way we talk about them, we say that they're going to wake up, They're going to start doing the processing, send the outputs, send the information, and pass on the information back to us, and then go back to sleep. So these are basically the few examples that I put in there. Please go through them and understand them. And this is a very high level, but a very basic information provided in those ones. So when you will look into all these examples, a very common denominator that comes into your head, a common factor that comes into your mind is that what can be automated, what cannot be automated, right? Trust me, anything that can be automated, you can even think of, that can be automated. There are so many examples that I've worked on myself to basically automate these processes. But interestingly, what I've done is that just at a very high level, what I have done is that I've highlighted few areas which I have personally worked on. Finance and HR, the supply chain, the IT system, the compliance, the customer services, because these are those areas where your processes are generally looks to be complex, but they are very quick in standardization. They're very quick in alignment. They're very quick to be re-engineered and reprocessed to align them to go in a particular straight direction. There are curves, there are areas where there are some, we have to throw the curveball as well, but they can be managed easily. Finance, the biggest area that we always love to automate, because these are those areas like your accounts payables, your accounts receivables, your ledgers, your payroll, that whole process very easily, because they all are dependent on the digital and structured systems. Even as a human being, you need to have that information in a particular format. Otherwise, you'll not be able to pay or being paid at the same time, right? Whenever you join an organization, one of the first things that I normally notice when I go in there is like, how is their onboarding process? Whether it is something really staggered, it's all over the place, or it is just, to the mark, and that we can quickly look into it, and we can actually remove the human factors out of it, so that you just come in and you automatically have your email address ready, you have all your system setups are ready. Yes, the human intervention will always be there, as we mentioned in the start as well, that these robots are dependent on us. How they're dependent on us, that we are going to, whenever we are doing the assessments of how we are going to automate that whole process, there has to be a factor that is kept in mind to make sure that you are dealing with these robots, and if they make a mistake, they can make a mistake, by the way, because if they do not find anything, they will throw an exception to you. So as a human being, my job becomes to basically go and handle that exception. So they need us. When we say that we have automated that process, a particular process, we normally deal with saying that between 80 to 90% of the end-to-end process we have automated. There's always a factor. There will always be a factor that will remain, that you are going to have the human intervention involved into it. If it is not, and something goes wrong because you're the software system, at the end of the day, you're going to have a problem. So one of the things that I'm going to close this whole session is that there is a particular course as well that we run, and that basically helps you to understand what is task mining, what is process mining, what is the process assessment, what are the criteria that we basically follow, and that's a very high level information that whenever we talk to the business, the teams, we basically do these assessments. We identify the processes, we identify the applications, we identify the leads, the people who are working on it, and comes to the point where we say that, okay, what is the value that you're getting out of it at the moment? What is the value that you are going to be looking at? What is in your mind is the value that you want to get out of it from a particular process if it is being done. Having said that, then we also assess few things like I mentioned earlier on as well, that what is the volume process per month? How much time one transaction makes? How much is the volume per week, per day, per minute, per month. So we do all these assessments, and then we apply different formulas and different things to tell you that, okay, an average cost of your employee is this much. You're spending this much on a particular process, and if you automate the whole process with a particular solution, you're going to basically be able to save this much money. But at the same time, when we come to the assessments part of it, and when we talk to you about the process assessments and all those things, one thing that we always ask you to keep in mind, that which processes should be automated. Honestly, I have seen it in everywhere I work in the process automation side of the world, that when people see the automation, they get overwhelmed, they get overjoyed, and they just come back and say, okay, can we automate this? Can we automate that? Or can you make my life easy by doing this thing? So we do go back and tell them that, yes, a lot of things can be automated, but at the same time, a lot of things cannot be automated. So keep that in mind, that when you do the process assessments and what exactly you're looking at, it's like a rule-based process. It's a, does it like, is it high volume? How much digitally, say, I would say, how much digitally streamlined that particular process is? Is that information coming in a digital format? Is it a stable process or not? So whenever we teach you, whenever we train you, we bring you to a level, to a point where when you assess a process, you basically identify the gaps, and then you re-engineer the process. You optimize the process to come to a point where you are aware of that now is the right time basically to automate that particular process. So having said that, this is the criteria that we normally follow. And uh, we basically do play around with the processes, but when you basically learn all these things, you will actually end up saying that, yes, these are the processes that can be automated. These are the ROI. That's the net ROI that you are looking at. Um, that's how much savings that the company is going to get, in what form, in a tangible form or in an intangible form. So that's it pretty much from my side. Thank you so much for listening to me for close to an hour now.